I'm Paula B, and I'm hanging out with the absolute amazing Kool Moe Dee. How are you today?
Cool.
Cool. I enjoyed your show. It was really hot. So I enjoyed it.
Okay.
It brought me way back. So tell me what's hot and what's new with you?
In the studio, believe it or not, recording a new album, songs in the key of OG.
Okay. And could you just tell me a little bit about the difference between the rap music from your era to today? What's the difference?
Corporate America is way more involved in this era. So when we were doing it, nobody even believed in it. Nobody thought it would be anything. As a matter of fact, we got condemned from our elders, the people that came before us, in and out of music. They would shut that noise up. What are you doing? And I can understand if you used to hear a record and then you hear a DJ scratch one. It's like, what is that? Doesn't make sense. But you know, the DJ, the MC, the B-boy, all just creating a wave that generation of kids came up with. And by the time 79 hit, because we're talking 76 and 77, South Bronx, Harlem, New York, just all over. And by the time we get to 1979, when Rappers Delight comes out, big crossover record. I would say, I always say corporate America as opposed to white America, but I'll say white America for now, gets a wind of it, and you know, the phenomenon starts slowly but surely. 3 years later, we get Planet Rock and The Message from Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5, Melly Mel on there, and they start to see that it can be a little social commentary. Still don't really break through, and then finally in 1986, Run DMC does Walk This Way, does it with Aerosmith, and then the whole world's like, oh, that's what it is. And from that point on, corporate America started to respect it as a business, even though they thought it was fledgling and going to be still, they kind of thought it was a fad, really. And that was the first time they started believing that it had legs, because right after Run DMC, the Beastie Boys came, and pulling no punches here, whenever white America gets involved in black America stuff, then we start to validate it.
Okay.
Universally, I should say globally. So once that happened, Beastie Boys had success. And the bad thing about it is we never had anything against the Beastie Boys. We never had anything against Vanilla Ice. We never had anything against Eminem. But the paradox that's always created when the business side of the equation gets in and you see things happening on one side that doesn't happen on the other side, it creates this adverse kind of almost adversarial relationship where you're almost forced to choose sides, which is not really what hip-hop is about in the first place. So the thing I do like about it is the fact that Eminem comes through Dr. Dre and Beastie Boys comes through Rush with Run DMC and those guys or whatever, so you couldn't separate it the way they were actually trying to separate it. So for me, just enjoying watching that journey and watching it transpire from Rappers Alike to where Jay-Z is now. Again, who'da thunk? You know, we didn't even think it. I mean, I'd love to say I had that much insight. I just knew we loved it and we were doing it from passion, and now this generation is doing it from business.
Okay. And do you think hip-hop still has the poetry that it had a long time ago?
I think it does. The problem is the guys that probably are the most poetic, the most profound, most prolific, most proficient, my alliteration, check my alliteration, y'all, basically don't really have record deals. Record companies are hand-picking the kinds of artists that they want to promote. So I say, and the proof of that is in 1989, my album was called Knowledge is King. Public Enemy had Fight the Power. KRS-One had You Must Learn. They saw that there was a conscious movement happening in hip-hop at the end of the 80s without radio play. I was probably the only one getting real radio play. Public Enemy started to get some a little bit later, but we did all of that without radio play. And the millions of people that started paying attention, corporate America, in my opinion, made a choice that we can't have that. We would much rather promote gangsta, get them going at each other as opposed to uniting with each other. And I said, you know, you go from not playing hip-hop on the radio to playing some of the most vile hip-hop records and beeping out the profanity. That means you really want that record on the radio.
Absolutely.
So that record, those types of records, and the imagery that went along with it helped expand and explode the gang violence situation in America, because not to say that weren't cultures that had gangs in it, but it didn't become like the popular thing it did in the early 90s, which also created an adversarial situation back to that same kind of thing. The corporate America picks one side over the other, and then we on the East Coast speak out about it because we were in a conscious space. The West Coast, not saying that they weren't conscious, was just talking about their experience, and they didn't expect, they weren't making records for radio. So we had no problem with understanding what they were doing, but once it became pop culture, and you started marketing gang violence, us speaking out on it created this space where, once again, the substance of the East Coast, West Coast riff was never really talked about. They just kind of made it a style thing and kept it very superficial, made it real personal, culminated in the hype of Tupac and Biggie, so to speak, making Coast choose sides, and that was also a personal beef that had nothing to do with Coast. And they just spun it in a way, because the divisiveness amongst black Americans is always the way we fall. So it was almost like the COINTELPRO back in the 60s, you know, hip-hop COINTELPRO is what it really was.
And do you see that changing?
Absolutely. You know, nature, energy, pure energy. Energy can't be destroyed, it can only be contained. So the spiritual energy in us, I mean, we went through slave ships, through the civil rights movement or whatever. It doesn't matter how many times they try it. We may lose some people along the way, but we're here. It doesn't stop.
Hey, it doesn't stop, and I think that you have inspired many. I know a lot of the young kids look up to you. I mean, you have a lot to tell. You had a lot to offer. If you had one thing to share with them, what would you tell the up and coming?
Believe in yourself, sincerely. The biggest problem, I think, especially just from the African American community, and then when you take that into the art, we take what we learn into the art form. If you really, really believe in your higher self, because we always market ourselves to our lower self, sex, drugs, violence, whatever, and not to say that those things weren't there. Even in the early 70s, what they call the blaxploitation era of blaxploitation movies, we had the Black Panthers on one side, and we also had the Mac on the other side. So we understood the balance. Now you're in a space where they're only promoting the Mac. That doesn't mean that the Panthers aren't still there. So I would say just believe in yourself and trust in your energy, trust in your gift. It comes from a higher place than anything that you live in.
That's right. Trust in your gift. Trust in your gift. This is Positive Reality. Kool Moe Dee. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Thank you.
1 2 1 2. Yes, y'all. It's Kool Moe Dee. Chilling. Positive Reality. Chilling with my girl Paula B. Peace.